Have you ever searched for a helmet tutorial, only to find out that almost all the first step was to buy a 3D printer and a $30 3D file, and you just think to yourself, well, fuck that. Yeah, I know the feeling. Today we're going to make a Daredevil helmet from the series Daredevil Born Again, purely from cardboard and foam. And also other stuff too because I'm broke as fuck and I don't have a 3D printer lying around in my house. Anyway, if you want Santa Claus to bring you a PS5 and an early copy of GTA 6, make sure to like this video and subscribe. The templates are available in the description of this video and don't worry, they're free. Just watch until the end of the video to learn how to print them. I use a cutter to cut out the pieces and then I glue them to an illustration board and then I cut it out again using a cutter. Now, after cutting the pieces, I'm gonna show you how to fold them correctly because I know some of you asked me how to fold the pieces in the comment section, so I drew these two different lines here. The other one is a broken line, which you should fold like this, and the other is a dot and dash line, in which you should fold like this. With this in mind, we can now continue to the most fun and boring part, which is putting the pieces together to build the helmet. So, I used masking tape and glue gun to connect the pieces. I first taped the two pieces together, and then I glued them at the back using a glue gun. I continued to do this to the rest of the helmet until I connected all of them. So I'm gonna speed run through this so I won't bore you with me just connecting all the pieces. Or you could instead watch this as a guide on where to connect the pieces. For the eye part, I didn't use the original template to be used for the eyes, but instead, I used it as a guide to reshape the eyes by using aluminum foil and masking tape. Now, I'm gonna modify some parts of the template to add more details to it that are closer to the helmet from the new series. So what I did first was to draw a line on this piece to create this detail on the helmet. I then separated that piece from the original template using a cutter, and then I cut some more from the original template, but not too much to create a bit of a gap when we put it together again. Now, as you can see, I glued a piece of a folder to the back to connect the two. You can also use a cereal box or any other thick paper if you don't have a folder lying around. After that, the next detail I'm going to add is this one here. I first taped this piece together so that when I drew the line to the template and removed the tape, the edges would be aligned when I cut out the template and glued it back again. So as you can see, the edges are a little bit aligned, but that's okay for me. Moving on, this piece right here should be leveled higher when we glue it to this piece. So what I did was I drew a gap on the edge of this piece and used that gap to glue this piece there. But before that, I drew this line first to separate this piece because we are going to create this detail to the helmet. And again, I used a piece of a folder to connect the two pieces together. And also, make sure to leave a gap there between the two pieces. I also trimmed this part to make it look closer to the original helmet. And now that this lower part of the side of the helmet is done, we can now connect it to the upper part of the side of the helmet using a folder again. Now that it's done, the last piece to add is this one here, in which I drew gaps on both sides of the edges. I then glued that piece to the last piece we just created to finish it, and then I created all of that again for the other side of the helmet. Lastly, to connect the side part to the helmet, I added gaps to both edges of this piece, and then I cut it like this to create flaps to make it more flexible, and then I attach it here. And finally, I can now attach the side part to the helmet using the gaps. I will now continue from here to finish the rest of the build. After connecting all of the pieces of the template, I didn't fully glue the back piece to the helmet. What I mean is that I only used droplets of glue sticks to attach it to the back, because we are going to remove it later in this video. Then, I grabbed this 2mm craft foam, and I cut a thin piece at around 4mm, and then I attach it here at the bottom of the helmet, all the way here. And also make sure that it is leveled a little bit higher than the rest of the helmet. Before applying paper-mache to the helmet, I first attach a cardboard support inside the helmet to prevent it from wobbling or deforming, as we need to maintain shape while the paper-mache is drying. Here, instead of using newspaper, I used colored paper so that I could keep track of how many layers I had applied to the helmet. Then, I used a mixture of white glue and a little bit of water for the paste. Applying paper-mache is really not that hard. You just apply the paste to the surface of the helmet using a brush, or like in my case, I use my finger. Then you would place the paper on top of the face and apply the paste again on top of the paper. And you would just continue doing that until you covered all of the surface with paper. After all of that, make sure that the paper-mache is completely dry before taking off any supports inside the helmet. I also carefully took out the back plate after taking off the supports inside the helmet. Moving on to the next step, make sure that you are outside or in a well-ventilated area and wearing a respirator or a mask before applying resin to both the inside and outside of the helmet. And also wear gloves. Here, I'm using a type of resin called polyester resin, but you can also use epoxy resin. I mix the resin and a little bit of hardener or catalyst, whatever you want to call it, in a plastic cup, and then I mix the two using a popsicle stick. Make sure to mix it thoroughly until they're fully combined. And then I applied it to both inside and outside of the helmet using a brush. So why are we using resin for this? Well, the resin kinda makes the helmet a little more durable and it prevents it from blending or flexing, which is crucial for this kind of build. Then I waited roughly 5 hours so that it had completely dried. And also I added supports here using sticks. Moving on, I continued to add resin, but this time it was inside the helmet. And then I left it there for the whole night to cure since it was nighttime when this was recorded. But applying resin only isn't enough to make the helmet really durable. So I added this thing here called fiberglass cloth, which is like a fabric, but it has properties that when the resin is applied to it, becomes very hard. And applying it is also like applying paper mache. You first drench the surface with resin mixture, then you would place the fiber cloth there, and then saturate it again with the resin mixture. So I filled in the inside of the mask with fiberglass cloth, and then waited for it to dry for about 5 to 8 hours until I was sure that it had completely dried. After that, I added a second layer of fiberglass cloth to it. So what I did next was to smooth out the surface and get rid of any bumps created by the cloth and resin using 120 grit sandpaper, especially inside the helmet since we're putting our heads there. After that, we're finally finished and we can now continue to the third part of this build, which is typically if you watch my videos, it was applying wood filler to the helmet, but not this time. After researching and watching a lot of YouTube videos, and with the help of my ant-sized brain, I finally came up with a method for creating texture for the helmet. So I grabbed my 2mm craft foam again and this big ass needle, probably used for knitting, I don't know, and I use it to crease lines to the foam. First is I place a masking tape to the foam and then I mark it where I would put the lines so that they have equal spaces. Here I used 5mm to mark the spaces, but I changed that later and used 7mm instead. And then I continue to crease the foam using the big ass needle. After that, I rotated the foam 90 degrees and then creased it again, but this time it was perpendicular to the lines I just created. Then I grabbed this screen mesh here, or sometimes called mosquito mesh. This will work better if the screen is aluminum and not plastic. What I'm going to do is I will press the screen mesh to the foam to print a pattern there by heating the foam with a flat iron since I don't have a heat gun. And then I will place the mesh on top of the foam and press it with a book or a flat surface. If you use an aluminum screen, which I did eventually while making this, you can instead hit the aluminum screen instead of the foam. After showing you how I created the texture for the helmet, I will now show you how I applied it to the helmet. First, I used my masking tape to create patterns for each surface of the helmet by taping the shape of the surface. Then removing it and placing it on a piece of paper until I had covered all of the surfaces. And after a day, I had finally created all of them. The next step I did was I create another foam with texture and I traced my foam pattern there. After that, I carefully cut it with a cutter and then I glued it to the surface of the helmet using super glue. So I just continued to do that until I covered all the surfaces that needed texture. For this piece, I didn't put any textures on the foam, and for the next pieces, I only put the screen mesh texture without doing all of the crease line. Then, I use a soldering iron to create the line on the glabella part of the mask. So I realized that the gap in this area was too big, so I removed it and I tried to stretch the foam to close the gap a little bit. After that, I covered the surrounding area of the horns with masking tape because I would apply wood filler to it to smooth the surface. I waited for it to dry and then I sanded it down using 120 grit sandpaper again. Then I applied a second layer of wood filler and then I sanded it down again until I was happy with the result. So here's how it looks after applying wood filler. So the only thing I was left to do after this was to finish covering all the other surfaces of the helmet with foam. So this was the fourth part of the build, which was doing a paint job on the helmet, which is also the most satisfying part of the build in my opinion. To start it off, I first applied 2 to 3 layers of primer to the helmet, and then I realized that I forgot to put a foam piece on the lower part of the helmet, so I quickly added it using super glue, and then I continued to paint the helmet. The next thing I did was to carefully apply masking tape to all the black parts of the helmet, including the horns, and then I sprayed the helmet with regular red spray paint. After that, I finish it with a flat clear or matte clear coat so that we can remove the shininess of the red paint. Here's how it looks after it was done. So as you can see, here I got excited and removed the masking tape before even recording it, but I was still going to remove it anyway. The next step I took was I used a tiny brush to manually paint the black parts of the helmet. I was really gonna show it here that I manually painted the parts, but it didn't get recorded, so that was frustrating. Moving on, I mixed red and black acrylic paint to create a dark red mixture. And then I used that to paint the horns of the helmet, including the surrounding areas of the eyes. And also, I sprayed the helmet again with a matte clear coat, and here's how it looks. So I removed the pair of lenses from sunglasses, and I also grabbed this red plastic thingy, which is actually a color light filter. You know, the ones they use to change the color of the lights from this kind of contraption. But you can also use red cellophane for this if you don't have one, or a red sunglasses lens. I first cut out the shape of the eye from the light filter, and then I glued it inside the helmet. After that, I cut out the shape of the eye from the sunglasses lens using this mini Dremel, and then I glued it on top of the light filter inside the helmet using a glue gun. And that's it. The only thing left to do was to weather the helmet if you want to, and you're done. Lastly, I added this foam here on the bottom of the eye so that my eyes don't get hurt when I wear them. And I attached the backplate using a black garter at the back. So that's it. The helmet is finally done. I could have made the eyes better, but I'm happy with how it turned out. Although the patterns kind of disappeared due to the stretching of the foam on most part of the helmet, but I'm still okay with it. If you like this video and want me to create more of this, you can subscribe and like this video because it means a lot to me. So yeah. Well, actually, it's pretty simple. You'll just click it and you're done. Anyway, if you want to print the template, go ahead first to the description of this video and download the template file there. What you will do is print a caliper template like this one here and then use that to measure your head. Then grab that caliper and place it on a ruler and measure the distance between the 2 points of the caliper. After that, go ahead to the website called papermache.com or use the software called Paper-mache and open the file that you download from the description of this video there. If you want to scale your helmet inside papermache.com, here's how to do it. Search papermache.com online, then sign in with your account there. Then go ahead and import the file you download from the description of this video and move over to the number in front of the mask here. Click it and there, change whatever measurement you got from using the caliper and ruler, and you will notice that the size of the templates on the right panel will change. And from here you can adjust it however you want. And when you're done, move over to the file, then export, then choose as a PDF. And there you go, you can print it from here. You can also do this on your phone if you don't have a computer or laptop. Here I'm using Paper-mache, so basically it's the same way, just different UI, and it's for computer only. So I recommend that you use Paper-mache than Paper-mache since it's online and you don't have to download anything. Plus it is easy to navigate and use. Yeah, so that's basically the video.